What follows may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
The world is full of stories. Stories of mysteries, of curiosities, of oddities. Join Kat and Jethro Gilligan-Toth for the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected, as they lift the lid and cautiously peer inside the Box of Oddities.
What are you laughing about?
Your little dance.
Oh, it's my pre-show dance. I have a little ritual.
I like it.
You have a warm-up ritual. You have vocal exercises.
I don't do that every time, and I know that you're trying to perpetuate that idea, but I don't.
I do an interpretive dance number.
It is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you so much. We're back from our 2 weeks in Ecuador, researching bizarre and strange things that we can talk about, and what a trip that was. That
Oh my
was
gosh.
fun.
It was amazing and wonderful, and I can't wait to go back, and I want to go to all the places. All the places.
We went to the Extreme Art Museum in
Right.
Cuenca,
Yeah.
Ecuador, and saw some really disturbing imagery.
It was amazing. And the sink that looked like a tiny little gnome man was peeing on you.
Yes. You went into the men's bathroom, and instead of a faucet, it was like a weird little gnome man, and you stuck your hands in his urine stream.
Yep. It was magical.
It was magic.
We spoke with one of the proprietors, and in broken English, she spoke to us, speaking to her in broken Spanish. And she said, the people of this town do not always appreciate what we do here. And
Yep.
we were like, we get it.
Yeah.
We get it.
And speaking of the language barrier, we both speak Spanglish, and not very well. Well, you speak it better than I do.
Well, thank you.
But the longer we were there, the more emboldened I became, and I started trying to foolishly put sentences together. I asked somebody, because we had dog treats with us, because there were a lot of stray dogs in Ecuador. And I asked somebody if we could feed their dog, but I used the wrong word. Apparently, I had asked if I could eat their dog,
Right.
and that's frowned upon.
It was also an interesting trip for me in that I don't sleep well. In high altitude, I guess I don't get altitude sickness in the way that a lot of people do. I don't get nauseated. I don't get as out of breath as you do. But I do not sleep. And I was just exhausted. By the end of our trip, I was just exhausted. And we had long flights home. And one of them was especially bad. And I was just starting to feel a little delirious. So I went back all the way to the back of the airplane, which was one of those big ones. What is it? Like a big plane.
The one with the middle row.
With the middle row, exactly. So I went all the way back to use the restroom, and there were people in there. So I had to wait, and I waited in the very, very back part where the airline attendants keep like the food and stuff. But there's also the back doors. And there was no one else back there. And I was just standing there next to these doors, these exits of a plane. And I started to have these, like, how Maria Bamford's talked about aggressive, unwanted thoughts.
Yes.
Like I started to have like invasive thoughts about like just opening the door. And I was like, you need to get some sleep.
Yeah, you really need
I was
to
just
sleep
standing there
better.
thinking, what if I'm doing it right now and I don't think I'm doing it? And I was like, it's not good at all.
That's alarming.
Ma'am, I need some peanuts. Stat.
TheBoxOfOddities.com is our website. Thank you for all the messages we've been getting at curator@TheBoxOfOddities.com, and of course on all of the social media. It's been fantastic.
We do have some catching up to do because it was hard with, being in Ecuador and the travel back. And we have a little bit of catching up to do. And if we haven't gotten back to you, terribly sorry.
Yes, we'll get to it as soon as possible. I have a topic today that's very personal to me. Today we're going to talk about what it's like to be in a coma.
Ooh.
I had a coma when I was 6. I went into a coma. I had one. It's like, I ordered it from Amazon. I got a coma coming.
It's kind of like I had a starter jacket.
Yeah.
It was the Colorado Rockies. I chose it because of the color, not because of the team.
When I was 6, I had a seizure, and I went into a coma for 36 hours. And it was a very strange experience for me because, as I've described it before to you, it was as if no time had passed at all. I was sitting at the kitchen table. I was drinking my orange juice, And the next thing I knew, I was face down in a hospital bed.
Oh.
It was like no time had passed. It's like if somebody just edited out 36 hours of my life and I just jumped from my kitchen table drinking orange juice to face down in a hospital bed. It was very, very strange.
I'm sure.
But perhaps the strangest thing happened, and I feel weird sharing this because it's just so strange, and I don't have any idea what it was, other than perhaps, it was just my little 6-year-old brain coming out of a seizure or whatever. But I had this very strange mystical type experience the night after I regained consciousness. Mm-hmm. I was lying in my hospital bed on the 7th floor of the Boston Children's Hospital, which was the intensive care ward at the time.
Nearest to where we live in Bangor, Maine.
That's not far, yes. And I'm lying in bed, and I'm facing the big wooden door that went into the bathroom. Mm-hmm. And like a lot of those older wooden doors, and I guess even newer ones, there's a very strange pattern in the grain of the door.
Sure.
And it looked kind of like the outline of a person. You could see like the head come down and then the shoulders. And, that's what it kind of looked like to me. Kind of like one of those Rorschach ink blot tests or something. I don't know. But at one point during the evening, I'm lying there. A figure stepped out of the door and walked over beside my bed and stood there. At least that's what I perceived to have happened. It wasn't frightening.
Really? Because
I didn't feel frightened. I was 6 years old. I didn't feel frightened by it. But I guess when I look back on it and how I perceived it, it was kind of a weird, grotesque looking thing, But I didn't feel fear. It was weird. But then the next thing I know, it's gone, and a few hours had gone by, I guess. I don't know. I just looked around and everything was normal. So I don't know if probably some sort of a hallucination of some sort, but it stuck with me all these years. And I've even Googled stuff like that online to see if anybody else has had an experience like that. Apparently I'm the only one.
Well, it's hard because what kind of keywords do you use for that? Like grotesque man door grain stepping out guy?
Yeah, no, I tried door goblin. That didn't work.
I love door goblin.
That should be our Wi-Fi password. That's a great door goblin.
Well, that's similar to, I can remember when I was a kid, we were camping and I was sleeping in the back of our conversion van, and I woke up and there was a small gnome sitting across from me, cross-legged, staring at me, but his eyes were doing that like hypnotic spinning thing. And
like on Scooby-Doo.
Exactly like that.
Yeah.
And I just stared at it until eventually I covered my head with a blanket, and that makes things like that go away.
Yes.
So
that's true. That's true. So that was my coma experience. Here are some other people's experiences. I found this on Reddit. One user wrote, I spent 8 days in a coma last year after a particularly traumatic surgery. My waking thoughts were wondering if I had died or if I had made it. I couldn't open my eyes, and I was on a medical air mattress, so it felt like I was floating. This led me to think that I had died, and I remember thinking it wasn't so bad. I was wondering if my dad was going to come get me. Once I realized that I was still alive, I started thinking that I had been injured fighting in a war, and was worried that my wife might not know that I was still alive, even though he hadn't been fighting in a war.
That's weird.
What I learned later from my wife is that she was there the whole time, and while I was fighting against the doctors and the nurses, I would immediately calm down and cooperate when she held my hand and sang to me, and that still brings tears to my eyes, he says.
Oh, my. It's interesting how your brain reacts, and sometimes it leaps to certain conclusions, maybe because of associations or maybe because of something that you I don't know. And so it's like, oh, well, this happened, then this must have been what happened. I must have been in a war.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
yeah, that's probably exactly the situation. Redditor Nitzlarb writes, my dad was in a coma for 2 months a couple of years ago. Recently, we were talking about the whole thing, and he told me that he had dreamed/hallucinated that he had lived for 10 years in his coma. He did all the things that he does or would do during that time. He said it was very vivid. He walked across the country a couple of times during this period. He When he woke up and got home, he said it would throw him off when he would run into people that he hadn't seen for a while since before the coma because he expected them to look 10 years older.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's weird because he had already experienced that.
Yeah, in his mind, he had lived 10 years.
That's really fascinating.
And he remembered all the things that he had done.
Weird. Maybe his brain was just bored. It's like, well, I got to do something. I guess we'll walk across the country.
And then I came across this story. There's an 81-year-old guy who was in a coma. He fell out of a plum tree and he was in a coma for 4 days. What an 81-year-old is doing climbing a plum tree is beyond me.
And plums are delicious.
When he came to, he was not an 81-year-old granddad. He was a horny teenager. He became sex mad. And he blew 3,000 pounds of his savings in one session at a local brothel after falling head over heels for a hooker, young enough to be his granddaughter.
I'm glad that you went with he blew money.
Yeah, well, he did. It was money that he blew. His son Daniel had taken control of his dad's 2 houses and bank accounts. The judges ruled that his sex addiction made him unfit to govern his finances.
I feel like I know some people like that.
And that brings us to our final case. This is fascinating to me. Terry Wallace. Terry Wallace was a 19-year-old kid living in Arkansas in 1984. Mm-hmm. Terry and his buddy Chubb were going fishing, and they'd been drinking, and they were in his pickup truck. And
Wait, how old was he?
19.
Okay.
He was 19. Drinking in the pickup truck, and they smashed the truck. It went over a bridge 25 feet into a creek. One of them was ejected from the vehicle. The other one was hanging out of the vehicle. When the paramedics arrived, 24 hours later, they didn't find him for 24 hours.
Oh.
So they rushed him to the hospital. He sustained neck injuries. He was in a coma for 19 years. And then woke up.
No.
In 2003.
What made him wake up? Like, how does that happen? What made him wake up?
They don't know. They're not really sure.
And they weren't expecting him
Nope.
to? It wasn't like, I mean, after 19 years, I guess you kind of like, oh, I guess this is just where you're at now.
Well, sure. I imagine everybody was telling him, hey, you know what?
Whoa.
Give up hope there after a while.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
And what they would do is they would make this 25-mile trip to visit him at the facility, and then occasionally on the weekends they would bring him home, thinking that maybe a familiar environment would help trigger some sort of conscious awareness of where he is and who he is. There was nothing apparent that triggered his recovery. It's just one day he opened his eyes and said, "Mom."
Whoa.
Can you imagine that?
Oh, his first word was mom.
His first word was mom, followed quickly by milk and Pepsi.
Oh, he was thirsty then.
He must have
I
been.
mean, it makes sense.
19 years. The really interesting thing to me in this case, besides the fact that that's pretty miraculous, is that he still thinks it's 1984. Oh. Or he did. I think now he's kind of starting to come to terms with it because it's been another 10, 12 years since he woke up. But they asked him, who's president? He said, Ronald Reagan. At the time of his accident, he had just been married, and he had a baby daughter named Amber. Amber is now, or was at the time, 19 years old.
And a stripper.
And a stripper. Did you look that up? You ruin all my surprises. Yeah, a stripper. And he just couldn't grasp the idea that his little infant daughter was 19 years old and that 19-year-old woman standing in front of him was his baby daughter. And in his mind, he's still thinking he's 19.
Right.
And I guess he was making sexually lewd comments to her.
Oh, no.
Not really
Well,
understanding.
It's confusing.
And,
yeah.
Sure. I
He's
mean,
very thirsty.
You got to give him a pass on that one.
Yeah.
But apparently there was a family feud when he had his accident. His parents sued for full custody and rights to whoever can see him and things like that, and essentially cut his young wife and daughter out of their lives. And the wife, who was very young at the time, like 17, said she didn't know what to do. She had a little infant baby. Her husband had been in this horrible thing, so she didn't fight it. But since he's regained consciousness, she wants back into his life. To complicate the issue a little bit, even though she's still legally married to him, she had, I guess, 3 kids with another guy who has another wife. And so her kids have been living with this guy
Right.
and his other wife. It's just confusing.
Sure.
But the good thing is they've had a couple of times where they've reconnected and she says he's still the love of her life.
Aww.
Which is really sweet.
That is sweet.
And apparently he lights up when his daughter comes around to see him. You know, she gives him $2 bills and stuff like that.
Sure.
And,
yeah, that's always exciting.
yeah. But she has a daughter now too.
So he went fishing and then woke up and he had a granddaughter.
Yep, that's really it in a nutshell.
That's nuts.
Yep, that's the story of Terry Wallace.
Oh, Terry. It's so interesting that there doesn't seem to be any one thing that awoke him from a 19-year coma. That's
Yeah.
blows my mind.
Yeah, it's a medical miracle.
It's just, oh, it happened.
Yeah, it just happened. And the fact that it kind of, I connect to that personally because I understand that feeling, although it's nothing like 19 years, but that feeling, no time having passed
Right.
whatsoever. In my case, 36 hours. And it was like being teleported, like on Star Trek or something, to another location in another time.
Well, and that's different because different people experience different things, obviously. And you were telling me the other day about a guy who was in a coma but was aware of everything that was going on around him.
Yeah.
I think that's more terrifying.
Yeah.
You know, I'd rather be like, "What's going on? Hey guys," 20 years later, than be like, "Oh yeah, I've been around."
I've had to pee for like days now, and no one will take me. That would be horrible.
It would be horrible.
It would be.
Yeah. I want it known here and now. Just unplug me.
Okay. Duly noted. Duly
Thank
noted.
you. I'm good.
The Box of Oddities. It's not for everyone.
Time for that thing in the middle today. Weird things found in Japanese vending machines.
I love it.
Number 5, horned beetles. They're considered both good luck and fun. Live beetles are sold at a vending machine so kids can play with them and bug collectors can add them to their collection, like Pokemon.
That's so upsetting. Okay, number 4, eggs.
Eggs, like
Just raw eggs
in a vending machine.
in a vending machine. I don't think we need to go any further. It's eggs.
Number 3, lettuce. That's right, they have lettuce vending machines in Japan. There's a picture of one here next to like a row of gumball machines with little kids standing by. Nothing lights up a child's eyes.
Like a head of iceberg.
Dad, can I have a quarter for a fistful of romaine?
Number 2. This is a combo. Energy drinks and condoms.
Really? You buy one, you get the other?
Yep, they come together.
I certainly do.
Ow, or at least they should.
And the number 1 weird vending machine item in Japan, yes, used panties.
No.
Yes, used panties. There aren't many of these machines
you can
left.
Get them on the internet.
What?
What?
What'd you
Nothing.
say? Okay.
Vending machines.
All right. There aren't many of them left, but they're still out there. Now, here's the thing. They're not really pre-worn panties. They're panties that are manufactured to look as though they've been used. However they do that, I don't want to know, but that's what they are. And they put the English word used on it to suck in the tourists.
I
Yeah.
see. Well, that's a terrible disappointment.
It's Japanese panty scam. That's what it is.
That's what, if I had a nickel for every time I heard that, it's a Japanese panty scam.
I know what the title for this episode's going to be.
It's a Japanese panty scam.
Yep.
Yes, please, 100 all day long. Ding, ding, ding.
The Box of Oddities with Kat and Jethro Gilligan Toth.
TheBoxOfOddities.com is our website, and you can send us suggestions, comments, whatever.
Not panties.
Not panties, though. You can send us a verbal message, shall we say, at curator@theboxofoddities.com. What do you have for me this week?
All right. So, okay. All right. Okay. This is actually something that I was inspired to do while we were in Ecuador. We were watching television. It was one of those Could It Be shows. And a commercial kept coming on. And it was in Spanish. And it was all like, blah, 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 blah. And I kept wondering if you were hearing what I was hearing. Because I know you don't speak as much Spanish as I do.
Right.
So I didn't know if you were thinking the same thing I was thinking every time this commercial would come on. Because it was all like, blah, 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 D.B Cooper, blah, 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 blah. And I was like,
D.B Cooper.
so
D.B Cooper.
one afternoon, a day before Thanksgiving in 1971, a guy calling himself Dan Cooper boarded Northwest Airlines Flight 305 in Portland, bound for Seattle. He was wearing a dark suit and a black tie and was described as a business executive type. While in the air, he opened his briefcase, showing a bomb to the flight attendant, and hijacked the plane.
Yeah, that was the day, back in the day when you could get bombs on airplanes. Now you can't get hairspray.
No, that was an issue, and we had a hard time twice.
I got detained at Ecuadorian customs because you had too large a can of hairspray.
It wasn't hairspray; it was dry shampoo.
And they pulled me into the back room, and it was actually quite enjoyable. They were very nice.
They were very nice. So the plane landed in Seattle. The guy demanded $200,000 in cash, 4 parachutes, and food for the crew before releasing all the passengers. With only 3 pilots and 1 flight attendant left on board, they took off from Seattle with the marked bills, heading south while it was dark and lightly raining. In the 45 minutes after takeoff, Cooper sent the flight attendant to the cockpit while donning the parachute tied to the bank bag full of $20 bills to himself. He lowered the rear stairs and somewhere north of Portland, Oregon, jumped into the night.
Out of a jumbo jet.
Out of a jumbo jet.
It wasn't like he jumped out of a small aircraft. Right. He jumped out of a fucking jumbo jet.
And I do want to say I got most of my information from Citizen Sleuth and Wikipedia. So there you go. So when the plane landed with the stairs down, they found 2 remaining parachutes on the seat that Cooper was sitting in and a black tie. So I like that he took his tie off.
Yeah, to jump out of a jumbo jet.
He was like, you know what, this is not tie business. Normally for a flight, I would dress appropriately, which at this time means a tie. However, this is not tie business.
I thought it was pretty ingenious to ask for 4 parachutes, because if he asked for 1, they could just give him 1 that didn't work.
Couldn't they give him 4 that didn't work?
Well, but the idea was they were concerned that he was going to force other people to jump with him.
I suppose.
So that's pretty smart.
No, it absolutely is. So jets and a helicopter and another aircraft had been scrambled from a nearby Air Force base to follow Cooper's plane. The military was called in days after the hijacking, and approximately 1,000 troops search the suspected jump zone on foot and in helicopters. There was the plane that was used in the hijacking was flown out over the ocean and the stairs lowered and weights dropped in an attempt to determine when Cooper had jumped. So they recreated all kinds of situations to say, like, okay, well, if this had happened, then it would have been like this. And if this had happened, then it would have come, like this. Anyway, but no sign of D.B Cooper was ever discovered. It was actually... He boarded the plane as Dan Cooper, but it was a media miscommunication that led to him being called D.B Cooper. It was one of those things, kind of like the Ulysses S. Grant thing, where S isn't really his middle name.
But let's just face it, D.B Cooper's a cool name.
It does sound cool, doesn't it? Or D.B Cooper.
D.B Cooper.
9 years later, in 1980, so just north of Portland on the Columbia River, there was a young boy out and about digging a fire pit in the sand, which I vote yes all day long. I'm pro fire pit. His name was Brian.
That's a very controversial stance.
To be pro fire pit. Well, you know me. I take a stand regardless.
You do.
And sometimes it's just about fire pits and s'mores. He uncovered 3 bundles of cash while digging a couple of inches below the surface. And the rubber bands were still intact, and he found a total of $5,800. And it was the Cooper serial numbers. It was the first evidence that they had found since 1971, and that was 1980. So the FBI then searched that area further, analyzed the beach and the river. The river was dredged by Cooper hunters, and theories, ran amok how that money got there. And it's an interesting amount, and interesting that it was just that, and that it was buried a couple of inches below the surface. It wasn't like it was just hanging out on top.
But it had been 8 years, and it was near water, so it could have just been part of the money that fell out during the jump and then washed down a river and streams and then just got covered up with silt.
Possibly.
Or it could have been planted.
It could have been. So evidence and expert opinions suggested from the beginning that Cooper probably didn't survive that jump. From the experiments that they did and from what we know about enormous planes and that kind of jump, it just seems unlikely. But his remains were never recovered. The FBI, though, maintained an active investigation for 45 years.
Good Lord.
45 years.
That long.
Despite a case file that grew over 60 volumes in that time period, no definitive conclusions had been reached. There was, CBS Sacramento reports that a team of private investigators now believe that they've cracked a code that says that the infamous hijacker who went by the name of Dan Cooper, also known as D.B. Cooper, is in fact a man named Robert Rackstraw.
Shut the front door.
I will not. Rackstraw is a former Stockton resident whose family also lives in Calaveras County. Is that how you pronounce it? Calaveras?
I don't know, but it sounds official.
County. Okay. So this letter, which I guess makes sense, is something that he had given to them on the plane, was given to a former member of an Army intelligence unit that Robert Rackstraw had belonged to, and that service member recognized a set of digits in the letter as a code that he and Rackstraw had used during their time together serving.
Really?
Applying that code, new words appeared that investigators say point to Rackstraw. It said, "Can FBI catch me? SWS," which stood for Special Warfare School, where Rackstraw went to learn coding.
Well, now, that would make a lot of sense because he would have to have been pretty good at survivalist skills and that sort of thing to parachute out over the Pacific Northwest and survive.
Right. Yes. So there are investigators that believe that Cooper was a CIA operative, and that conclusion was based on that letter. And there are some theories. I don't want to say conspiracy theories, but there are some theories that the FBI actually had more information than they let us know that they had about this case, and that they actually either let the Dan Cooper character go, or that he was detained and was dealt with internally.
Ooh.
So, however, this Rackstraw guy, his attorney says that his client lives in San Diego now, still maintains that he is not D.B. Cooper. The FBI issued a statement after this development. They said they still don't have enough evidence to resolve this case. And this case remains the only unsolved air piracy case in commercial aviation history.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And the guy's still alive, the one that they think may have
Yes.
been. Interesting.
Exactly. And he lives in San Diego.
Has the statute of limitations expired on something like that? I mean, that's got to be pretty serious.
I imagine with federal aviation stuff, there's not much of a of a statute of limitations. I mean, something like personal assault or rape, whatever. Yeah, you've got a couple years. But if it comes to like an airplane and the government's property, probably there's not one.
Yeah, whatever you do. Whatever you do, don't take oversized hairspray cans on board.
Anyway, I just thought I hadn't heard any of that D.B Cooper stuff, and that just came out in like February.
That's fascinating.
They just, found this coded message. So I thought that was super fascinating.
That is fascinating, and I look forward to seeing if they follow up on that anymore, because it would be so cool if they finally solve this case.
You know what's cool? Taking her tie off before jumping out of a plane.
That's cool.
I'm just kidding. Don't steal. It's not right. But, I mean, that's still pretty cool.
TheBoxOfOddities.com is our website. You can send us a massage at curator@theboxofoddities.com. And, of course, find us on social media.
Yes.
We appreciate all the messages we're getting.
And eggs.
Eggs? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, send us it. No, don't send us it. God.
Send us
Don't
eggs.
send us eggs. We appreciate you being here. We appreciate you accepting us for who we are. We'll see you next time.
Keep flying that freak flag.
Fly it proudly.
Fly it high. Yeah.
And so, let it be known that the Box of Oddities belongs to you, and its fate is in your hands. Therefore, it's been requested by those whom I report to beseech you for assistance. The Box of Oddities is free. We ask but one thing of you: to provide a 5-star rating and a positive review. True, that is 2 things. However, 'tis merely a 5-star rating and a positive review. Also, subscribe to us. Okay, so 3 things is all we ask. 3 things and 3 things only. Henceforth, the Box of Oddities commits to the telling of stories. Stories of the strange, the bizarre, the unexpected. We wish to offer our deeply felt gratitude and appreciation for your patronage. TheBoxOfOddities.com. On Facebook at facebook.com/BoxOfOdditiesPodcast. On Twitter at Box of Oddities. And Instagram at Box of Oddities Podcast. Copyright 2018. All rights reserved.